Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon. Today I'm going to be giving you guys my full meta report talking about every role, all of the best champions in the game, counter picks, everything like that. So we're just going to go role by role, and again I'm going to mention the best champions in each type of archetype, so like bruisers, AP champions, that type of thing in each role, but I'm not going to mention every single champion in the game. So if I don't mention your champion, just assume that means that they're just a worse version of a better champion. So for example, I'm not going to mention Mundo as one of the top lane tanks. That just means I think there's better tank options. It doesn't mean you can't play that champion at all. It's definitely still a champion that's playable in some scenarios. And if you guys are curious on the scenarios that your champion is playable in, and maybe I don't mention them, just ask me in the comments and I'm happy to answer any questions. So getting right into it. So we're going to start off with just the best top laners overall. So Rumble, Gnar, Renekton, and Wukong are just the best top laners for various reasons. Rumble just has insane damage, scales really well, and is insane in team fights because of his ultimate. Gnar is solid in lane due to the range advantage, and extremely hard to kill in fights with insane damage and really good setup when they get Mega Gnar. Renekton is just an insane lane bully who's on level 5, is pretty much unkillable, and is going to be able to set up so many dives and just like pretty much carry most early games and get his team so far ahead and then still become a tank later on. And then Wukong is just an insane lane bully. He does so much damage in lane, he's extremely hard to kill. He's just really, really annoying as a whole and just overall really strong. So those are going to be the best champions overall for the meta in top lane. Then we have the best split pushers. So Jax and Camille are by far the best split pushers right now. Camille is a bit better into really like tanky champions, and Jax is really good as a split pusher in general, but especially good into tanks as well, but also when you need a bit of AP because he has some AP in his kit, and also into auto attack heavy comps, especially into auto attack heavy comps. Then we have Ornn and Poppy. So Ornn is definitely the best tank overall. Ornn is an insanely strong tank in top lane right now. Very good laner, just very good at all points. But Poppy is also really strong, especially into dashing champions. So those are definitely going to be the two best tank top laners right now. Then we have some additional bruisers I want to mention that are pretty strong. So champions like Volibear, Sett, Darius, Garen, and Aatrox, they're all solid bruisers, doing pretty similar things. Sett, Darius, Garen, and Aatrox are all really good into tanks. Volibear not as insane into tanks, but still fine into them. But a lot of these bruisers, they're solid into tanks, but they're good in most scenarios overall. So you can kind of pick those whenever. Then if you need some AP options, Warwick, Gragas, and Mordekaiser are really good for AP. Warwick is an insane lane bully, so if you need an AP champion but you need really good early game, then you can lock in the Warwick. If you want better scaling, something like Gragas or Mordekaiser is going to be a lot better for you. And Gragas is nice because you can kind of build partially tanky as well. So if you need a little bit more tankiness, Gragas is good, and then Mordekaiser just usually a solid AP pick in most scenarios. A champion I just want to mention in general that doesn't hard fit into any of these roles is Nasus. Nasus is insanely OP right now. He's pretty hard to punish in lane. Once he gets to 2-3 items and stacks up pretty well, he pretty much one-shots anyone in the game and can just run them down. His Wither ability is extremely OP. So just as a whole, Nasus is a really, really good champion, especially if you like those later game champions and you're okay with having a bit of a harder time early game and then just getting through that and carrying in the later parts of the game. And then lastly, we're going to mention some counter pick champions. So overall, Malphite is a very good counter pick into heavy AD comps. Jace is a good counter pick into squishy comps. Garen is going to be a really good counter pick against a lot of the best meta champions right now. So champions like Gnar, Renekton, and Wukong, they all don't have a very great time into Garen. It's not like Garen hard counters them, but he does struggle into them. And so Garen, or those champions struggle into Garen rather. So Garen overall is actually a really nice pick into a lot of the best champions right now in the meta and top lane. So definitely if you're looking for a counter pick champion and a very easy champion to play, Garen is very solid for that. Then Gwen is going to be a really good counter pick into tanks. As an AP option, and then Fiora is also going to be a good tank counter, especially if you need an AD option and kind of a split pushing option. So overall, that's going to be the main top lane meta. Again, there's more champions that can be played, so if you guys have any questions about specific champions, just let me know in the comments and I'll answer that in the comments. Okay, now we have the jungle meta. So Echo, Amumu, and Nilah are just going to be by far the best junglers right now. Echo is just insane scaling. He has pretty strong clear speed as well, and he's just never really weak at any point in the game while just being insane on 3, 4, and 5 items with his ult cooldown and everything like that. Amumu has an absurdly fast clear speed, good ganking, good setup, very easy to play, really never bad, and can build AP or tank, so you can pretty much be useful in any type of scenario with Amumu. And then Nyla is going to be an absolutely god tier champion on 3 items, especially if you have any type of enchanter. So of the 3 champions I mentioned, Nyla is the most situational. She struggles more in the early game. She actually has some type of weakness, but because she is just so OP, once you get to 3 items, again, especially with any enchanter, she is still going to be one of the top 3 junglers in Wild Rift right now. Then after that, we have Wukong, who is definitely going to be the best bruiser as a whole. In my opinion, people slightly overrate him. He's banned more than champions like Nyla or Echo are in a lot of my games, but I just think he's definitely a bit overrated. However, he's still really strong. So it's not like he's like, weak, but a bit overrated by people. Overall, though, he has insanely good burst damage, really good mobility, and still relatively tanky, especially depending on what it is that you build overall with him. Zed's going to be the best AD assassin. Again, Zed's going to be a really strong champion. After the nerfs, slightly weaker, but still really good carry potential. Still an insanely low ult cooldown, and just overall really strong. Then to mention some other tanky bruiser champions, Vi, Mbessa, Volibear, Riven, Lee Sin, Hecarim, and Red Kayn. I know that's a lot of options, but all of those champions are going to be pretty solid bruisers that are a bit tankier. And so I found it hard to narrow it down a bunch. To name like the absolute best of those bunch, though, Vi and Mbessa are definitely going to be the top 2, especially Mbessa, out of those kind of tankier bruiser champions. But any of those are really good options overall. Then for some of the more like carry / assassin bruiser champions, we have champions like Riven, Lee Sin, and Viego. All of those champions, they have really high burst damage. They're a little bit squishier than some of the other bruisers, but they're really good for carrying and just overall extremely strong champions as well. Then when it comes to AP junglers, Warwick, Gragas, Lilia, and Rumble are probably going to be the best AP junglers. Again, apart from the ones we mentioned, like Echo and Amumu, at the very top. But those are going to be other good options. Honestly, right now as well, with Malignance, Fiddlesticks is definitely an option to try out. So if you guys are looking for a bit of a different option, you can try out Fiddlesticks. I don't actually think he's insanely strong or anything, but it's something I wanted to mention because Malignance does work well on him. And so it's important to kind of note that he's definitely at least a little bit stronger than he was before. Then for some just like mega scaling junglers that if you just like farming up to 2-3 items and then carrying the game on there, Kayle and Shyvana are both extremely strong scaling carry junglers. So pretty good for solo queue if you just like that really selfish playstyle. You don't really have to worry about your laners a lot early. You kind of just focus on farming up and getting yourself really strong. Then when it comes to tank junglers, Poppy, Rammus, Maokai, and Nunu are going to be the best. I would say Rammus is overall the best, but he's a little bit more situational. Then after that, a lot of the other tanks are on a pretty similar kind of power level. Poppy's going to be especially good if they have a bunch of dashes. Again, Rammus is going to be especially good if they have a bunch of AD. Nunu's going to be nice if you need some AP on your team. Then for some counter picks, again, Rammus into AD, as we mentioned, going to be really good anytime the enemy have a bunch of AD champions. Olaf and Morgana are going to be really good against heavy CC comps overall, especially Olaf into melee, and then Morgana just in general when they have a lot of CC. Master Yi is actually a good pick if they have no CC, especially if you're in a lower rank. In lower ranks, Master Yi against no CC comps pretty much 1v9s the game. But even in Master Plus, if they don't have a lot of CC, he's genuinely a pretty strong champion in those situations. And then Rengar and Kha'Zix are going to be pretty good against squishy comps. So that's overall going to be it for jungle meta. Again, Echo, Amumu, Nyla going to be definitely the top 3 right now. Then going on to mid lane. So mid lane kind of has a cluster of champions that are just, in my opinion, way better than every other champion. And so I'm just going to mention them all kind of together right now. So Echo, Syndra, Victor, Kassadin, and Ori are just so much better than all of the other champions. So Echo is going to be really solid 95% of games, but he's going to be countered a little bit by heavy CC comps. So champions like Lissandra, Annie comps, like with also jungles like Vi or Rammus. I mean, obviously Rammus is, more into AD champs, but still will counter with the CC. So the heavy CC will counter him, but he's still strong overall. Syndra is going to be, so then there's kind of going to be like Syndra, Victor, and Orianna are all kind of like really strong mages. And they're good in similar situations, but slightly different. So like Syndra is the best single target burst damage, just one shot someone from super long range, but struggles a bit more at like killing multiple people at once. Obviously doesn't have as much AoE, so a little weaker in that aspect, but overall I would say a little bit stronger because of just how insane she is. 1 in lane phase, and then 2 with just bursting down any one person who's fed. Orianna is going to be better again into those more like comps that may be grouping up a little bit better into tanks as a whole, that type of thing. And then Viktor is going to be a really strong kind of laner in general as well, and it's just going to be kind of like a bit of a mix between Orianna and Syndra, a bit more consistent but not quite as strong that compared to either of those champions at what those champions do best. But overall, all three of those champions are very close, very, very similar. And then Kassadin is just really good into all of these champions that I just mentioned. Like, Kassadin has a fine matchup into all of these champs, scales really well. Malignance on 4th item for Kassadin makes Kassadin even more OP, and just overall is just very good at carrying into any heavy AP comp. So then after that, we have AD mid. So Corki is going to be the best AD mid, especially in terms of like lane bullies. And then Yasuo is going to be pretty close as well. Definitely going to be a solid lane bully and just AD champion in general. Then Jace, Yone, Akshan, and Lucian are going to be some follow-up AD mids that are not bad at all, but not quite as strong. Then when you have some like roaming / setup champions, you're going to have kind of a cluster of those. So you're going to have Lissandra, Ahri, Zoe, and Ryze. So overall, I would say that Ahri is really, really strong now with Malignance for just kind of roaming, setting up your team, having that high burst damage. Lissandra is going to be really good for countering these assassins and that type of thing. Zoe's burst damage is just so high, so anytime the enemy comp is squishy, it's pretty good. And then Ryze honestly hasn't felt as strong as some people initially anticipated to me. However, Ryze is still a pretty solid champion as a whole. Definitely just good for kind of, again, finding those roam angles, having really high burst damage if you do get too close, that type of thing. But is a bit shorter range, so not the best into champions like Orianna or Syndra. Then we have Ziggs. So Ziggs got buffed, and overall he is pretty solid right now with, or into a lot of like squishier comps. So into a lot of the mages that are strong right now, it's not a bad idea to pick Ziggs if you just want something that's not those mages, so you don't want to play those mages themselves. Ziggs does fine into them all because he has good range and good burst damage and really good scaling overall. Then if you just want an extremely easy champion that's very broken in mid lane right now, especially for solo queue games, play Singed. Singed literally just gets to go clear the wave and roam 24/7. He has insane wave clear and then can just roam and impact lanes. One of the players on North America got like 200 marks playing it with like 60% win rate last season, and it's still very OP. It's extremely brain dead too. Like, you pretty much just push and roam 24/7. And so if you're looking for something that's really easy to play, Singed is good. Akali and Zed are some of the best assassins apart from, you know, Kassadin. Akali obviously in terms of AP options, and Zed in terms of AD options for assassins, but both of those just good into squishy comps, good for roaming, that type of thing. And then some counter picks. Ace is really good into tanks. Galio's good into AP assassins and just heavy AP comps, and then Swain's going to be good into heavy melee. So again, main parts of mid lane that you need to know: Echo, Syndra, Viktor, Kassadin, and Ori are really dominating the meta, with some of those other options we mentioned being pretty strong as well. Then going on to ADC. So for ADC, Varus, Kai'Sa, and Sivir are going to be by far the best ADCs. You can kind of notice how there's always, you know, the couple champions that kind of just dominate the meta for each role. And then we'll just go into, again, the other champs that are pretty solid. So Corki and Zeri are really good, like, hyper-scaling AD carries as well. Corki's burst damage is insane. He's just really good at melting through tanks right now, and his lane phase is pretty safe and consistent. Zeri is really good, especially if they have a lot of shielding, of course, because of her passive, but she's also just good in general. As a hyper carry, she has strong damage. She's just pretty solid overall. Caitlyn and Ezreal are going to be the best long-range lane bullies, so they're a bit different in how they work, though. Like, Caitlyn is more obviously auto-attack focused, more focused on pushing the wave and then getting a bunch of plates and using their insane range to kind of poke people, whereas Ezreal prefers having kind of these poke supports like Karma or using those champions to kind of set him up nice to just get a bunch of poke and then slowly whittle down the enemy and then eventually find kind of an all-in angle. So Ezreal scales a bit better than Caitlyn, I would say, in most parts of the game, apart from like the very late game. But Caitlyn's laning is going to be a bit better overall. But those are kind of going to be the two best sort of longer range lane bullies. Lucian's going to be definitely the best like shorter range lane bully. So when you have obviously Nami, but also when you have some tanks to set you up, like Lucian's going to be pretty solid with those types of things. And then some counter picks. Xayah's going to be really good into aggressive comps. Misfortune is going to be good if your own team has a lot of good lane setup. So like if you're, or a gank setup rather, like if you have like Leona to set up you know, plays or whatever, or Nautilus or those types of champs, Misfortune works really well with those, and she's a pretty good lane bully as well. And then just like a last thing to mention, lane bullies like Kalista and Draven, they're just not that good right now. They need to snowball super, super hard. And even when they do snowball, it's pretty hard for them to still end up actually winning the game because they just get outscaled so hard by a lot of different champions. And then obviously there's some of the hyper carries I didn't mention, but those hyper carries that I didn't mention are basically going to do the same thing that champions like Kai'Sa or Corki or Zeri will do, just a bit worse, so I just didn't mention them, but they're definitely still like options that are completely fine to play as a whole. But that's pretty much going to be it for the ADC meta, and then lastly we have the support meta. So for support, for like solo queue, Poppy, Ornn, and Swain are going to be the best solo carry champions. Poppy, especially if they have a lot of dashes, Ornn is going to be most consistently strong, and then Swain if they have a lot of melee champions. But overall, these are going to be really good, just like I want to carry the game by myself supports, and still be able to like set up, you know, make plays, make engages, that type of thing. For duo queue and for enchanters, Emilio and Lulu are just god tier compared to everything else. They're completely broken enchanters. When it comes to other enchanters like Yuumi or Soraka or any of those other champs, they're still good. They're just not as good as Emilio or Lulu. Then when it comes to enchanters that actually have some agency to carry the game, you have champions like Nami, Karma, and Janna. All of those champions are good because they have a bit more agency to make, you know, plays themselves. They have better engage or better peel, so those types of things, which makes them a bit stronger overall. And then when it comes to more like traditional engage supports, champions like Thresh, Rakan, and Blitzcrank are going to be a bit better than the hard engage champions. The main reason for that is because a lot of the hard engage champions get countered super hard by things like Cleanse, Veil, QSS, and all those types of things. But champions like Thresh or Blitzcrank or Rakan, they have better ways out, or they don't have to hard engage as much or commit as hard to these kind of, you know, engages. They can just throw a hook, and then if it lands, it lands. If it doesn't land, it's fine. Or Rakan has his third ability to get out. So these champions are a bit better in these types of scenarios. Whereas when it comes to the hard engage champions like Nautilus, Leona, and Alistar, they just suck right now. Like, they're really, really bad. Alistar's a bit better than those other ones because he can avoid like Veil, for example, because he can hit his W and then just Q right after, but still struggles overall in the meta right now, so definitely not very good. A champion like Pyke can be good for solo queue, just for carrying, but it's not a champion I generally recommend unless you're really good on him or something like that. Some counter picks then, Galio is going to be really good against heavy AP, Morgana is going to be good against heavy CC, and then Braum is just going to be good for peel, especially with certain ADCs like Ashe, Ezreal, and Lucian. But as a whole, again, Poppy, Ornn, and Swain for solo queue, Emilio, Lulu for duo queue, and then after that, you know, you just can, some of the other tank champions or enchanter champions are fine, but just not as strong as those other ones that I mentioned. So overall, that's going to do it for the video. Just overall, that's the main, you know, main things to understand. Again, if I didn't mention your champion, just DM, or not DM me, comment below, and I'll answer in terms of how your champion fits into the meta and everything like that. Again, we just wanted to mention the strongest champions. Still definitely can play most champions in the meta. Like, I always want to make it kind of clear that it matters a lot more how good you are in your champion rather than how strong your champion is, kind of relative to the other champions, because if you're good at your champion, you can pretty much make it work in most scenarios. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.